What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking 5 big name players that are due for serious regression in the 2022 fantasy football season. Basically, these are guys that had huge years in 2021, whether it be top 10 in scoring or just huge spans where they helped you win games or maybe even championships. But looking at 2022, it's a whole different picture. Now, before we get into it, a quick reminder, if you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree with these names? Who else would you include in this category, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. And lastly, officially, the 2022 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide is available for purchase. You can do so online at alldaypigskin.com. Everything you can want at a great value. Top 150 overall player ranking, standard and PPR formats, individual player bios, tiers, projections, along with general fantasy advice like this. So make sure to check it out. Details in the description. But with that being said, let's get right into it. And as you can see, we have got our list of top performers from last season pulled up. And we're going to start at the running back position. We're going to look at 2 running backs and 3 wide receivers that I think are due for serious regression. And when it comes to the running backs, look, we're going to talk Cordero Patterson first and foremost. He was absolutely a fantasy darling last season. I mean, he wasn't drafted anywhere. He was a waiver wire pickup. But what made him so uber valuable in a cheat code was his dual designation. That means he could be played as both a running back and a wide receiver. And the Falcons also, well, they used him as both. So basically what that meant is you could get wide receiver-esque production in the running back role, and that provided you such a cushion at such an important position. Now, he's going to keep that designation more than likely in 2022. So some people might say, look, I've got another cheat code here. It's really simple. It worked last year. It's going to work this year. No Calvin Ridley. So the targets are going to be there, but let's break down why that might not be the case. First and foremost, yes, Patterson, for the first half of the season, absolutely awesome. But then what happened as the season progressed? Well, look, there were injuries. Teams figured out the Falcons. They stopped the rushing attack, and just honestly, people focused in on Cordero Patterson. So he wasn't getting as much volume as a pass catcher, whether that was because the Falcons realized they wanted to keep him fresh for other roles as a rusher or whatever the case might be, but he just wasn't seeing those targets. And then on the other side, the Falcons were so bad offensively that as a rusher, well, he lost his upside as well. So basically what ended up happening is right when you needed him most towards the end of the season, he became benchable, and he really wasn't doing anything of note, even though he did have that dual designation. And now heading into 2022, well, the Falcons, sure, they got rid of Mike Davis, but guess what? They brought in a younger option in the draft in Tyler Algier, and he's probably going to be the top running back for the Falcons. They've also added other targets. Look, Kyle Pitts, another year of experience. They've added Drake London, big-time wide receiver. He was my number 1 wide receiver in this draft class. So those targets aren't just going to be going to Cordero Patterson. And then lastly, and I think most importantly, there is a huge quarterback downgrade in Atlanta. So accuracy, that chemistry between Matt Ryan and Cordero Patterson last year, that's gone. Now it's Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota, look, the guy's not a starting quarterback. There's a reason why he was beat out by Ryan Tannehill and just beforehand. So to me, this is just a year where the Falcons are rebuilding, and Patterson, it was kind of a lightning in a bottle type of situation. I'm not getting cute here with him. I think absolutely under no circumstance is he going to duplicate a top 10 season, whether it be standard or PPR formats. Next, moving on, we have got Antonio Gibson of the Washington Commanders. Now, yes, he had an up and down season. He was, for the most part, pretty frustrating, but he was still technically a top 10 finisher. And I'm here to tell you that that's likely not going to happen this season. Now, the biggest reason why, because J.D. McKissic did not leave for Buffalo this offseason. No, in fact, he returned to Washington. So what does that mean for Gibson? Well, it means that he's going to continue to remain in his role as not the primary pass-catching running back on this team, which is what makes a lot of these running backs so valuable in PPR formats and increases their floor. And on top of that, and I think what's most telling, is the fact that Washington drafted Brian Robinson, the rookie running back, in this NFL draft class. And the comments made by head coach Ron Rivera is along the lines of a running back by committee. He said basically that he wants to use Gibson and Robinson like he did in Carolina with D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart. And he wanted to have that combination of a 1-2 punch. And basically, whenever that happens, whatever the split might be, 60-40, 50-50, 65-35, it usually leads to both running backs kind of just vulturing each other. On top of that, Gibson is going to be vultured from J.D. McKissic as well. So to me, this is just a bad situation. And even with the quarterback upgrade in Carson Wentz, I don't think it's going to change too many things here for Antonio Gibson himself and the rushing attack. To me, I mean, it couldn't have been any more clear that Ron Rivera wants to utilize Gibson kind of in a tandem role. I mean, sure, a year and a half ago, he said Gibson can be the Christian McCaffrey of this football team. And then what happened? Well, Gibson continued to get injured because he doesn't necessarily have the frame and his body just couldn't hold up. So I think that Washington just wants to keep Antonio Gibson fresh, and that's why they brought in more options at running back. So to me, Antonio Gibson, another name that will be coming outside of the top 10 running backs. But now let's get to the wide receivers. And here, I think this is really where it gets extremely interesting because we don't have to go far here. I'm starting off with Debo Samuel. He was another guy that was an absolute fantasy darling. I mean, the guy was a cheat code because, again, the 49ers used him as a running back. Now, he didn't have the running back wide receiver designation like a Cordero Patterson, but he is being drafted in the second round of mocks right now. And I think a lot of people are just assuming that he's going to be a top 5 wide receiver again. But here's why I completely disagree. First and foremost, well, I think that the potential of Trey Lance being the quarterback for the 49ers for the majority of the year is going to kill the fantasy value of so many top names here for the 49ers, from Elijah Mitchell to Debo Samuel to George Kittle. Because what happens with Trey Lance versus Jimmy Garoppolo? Well, Trey Lance is a guy that relies a lot, and I mean a lot more, on his legs than Jimmy Garoppolo did. So, I mean, even in the limited action that he had last year, that usage from him as a rusher at the quarterback position, it was pretty high, which means that's going to take away opportunities from whoever the running back is, whether it's Mitchell, whether it's design plays for Debo Samuel, whether it's supposed to be passes to Debo Samuel. And then on top of that, with Debo Samuel as a pass catcher, well, the passing upside for this offense is higher, whether 49ers fans want to admit it or not, with Jimmy Garoppolo than it is with Trey Lance. He's not as polished. He's a little bit more raw. And I don't think that Trey Lance can match the passing yardage of a Jimmy Garoppolo. So because of that, I think the passing yards, the receiving yards for Debo Samuel are going to go down. The rushing yards are going to go down because, I mean, he's complaining how he's being used. He wants to primarily be a wide receiver, whatever the case might be, because he doesn't want to get lumped in that category and not make as much money, yada, yada, yada. You get the point. I think that Debo Samuel here is due for serious regression and has way too high of a price tag right now. Next, moving on, I want to touch on Hunter Renfro. And Renfro was another guy that, in large part, kind of came out of nowhere and saved a lot of people's seasons. Now, he was absolutely tremendous. Again, he was a target machine. But why was that the case? Well, first and foremost, the Raiders, they lost a lot of wide receivers throughout the season, and Renfro just kind of found himself as the guy for Derek Carr. Also, let's not forget the other top passing option here for the Raiders in Darren Waller also got hurt, was unavailable for the majority of the season. So again, everything had to be funneled through Hunter Renfro. Well, what's the issue now heading into 2020? Obviously, it's the addition of Devante Adams, which means he is, no question about it, going to be the number one option for this offense as long as he's healthy. So Hunter Renfro no longer going to be that. And in fact, I think he's going to go all the way down to the third option because I think Darren Waller, because of his size, because of his position, creates more mismatches than a Hunter Renfro would. So to me, the pecking order is going to be Devante Adams, Darren Waller, and then Hunter Renfro. Now, to be fair, Renfro isn't being drafted as a top 10 wide receiver, but I think anyone that, just kind of is looking at these stats, looking at these rankings, and says, yeah, Hunter Renfro is going to be a steal, whatever the case might be, is in for just a very disappointing situation. To me, Renfro, everything broke right for him last season in terms of just targets going his way. Don't think it happens in 2022. And we're going to finish off this list with another guy in that category. That is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, yes, he finished all the way as the 21st overall wide receiver, but like in the last 4 or 5 weeks, he was a true wide receiver one. He was a top 3, top 5 wide receiver in all of fantasy football. He was an absolute stud. We loved him in his rookie year. We suggested taking a flyer on him, but here's why we are out on him in 2022. Very similar situation to Hunter Renfro. The Detroit Lions got absolutely slaughtered with injuries last year, from Deandre Swift to really all of their other wide receiver options to TJ Hawkinson, and Amon-Ra St. Brown became the main guy. It took him a little while, but he did, and at the end, he was getting so much volume from Jared Goff that he just became fantasy successful. That's why, to me, volume is king in fantasy football, especially for a position like wide receiver. But what's happened this offseason? Well, first and foremost, Deandre Swift, he's back. He's a pass-catching running back. He's going to catch 50 to 60 passes on the season, if not more. TJ Hawkinson is back as well. He's a big part of this offense. He was a top 5 fantasy tight end before he got injured. On top of that, DJ Shark was added in free agency. That's not all that too worrisome. To me, that's more so depth. But Jameson Williams being drafted in the first round by the Detroit Lions, that's a big deal. And whether he's, ready or not for the start of the season, I think he will be coming off an injury, but it's not just going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown as the number 1, number 2, and number 3 option like it was at the end of last year. And because of that, I think that he is going to absolutely plummet this season. I've seen him being drafted as high as the 4th, 5th round. I would not take that risk. I don't think the volume is going to be there. I think he's going to disappoint in PPR options. Like, one of these guys will bust for fantasy purposes. There's a lot of talent, but Jared Goff, he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to throw for almost 5,000 yards, something like that. And I don't think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to return the type of value he had last season. So for that reason, I would be passing on him as well. I think he is due for serious regression. But with that, we wrap up this breakdown of our top 5 big name players that are due for regression in 2022. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Again, check out the description for details in terms of getting a copy of the 2022 ADP Fantasy Football Draft Guide, now available for purchase. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.